And hello everyone, Peter here. If you're just tuning in, this is the part of the show where I tell you what I think about art. We all know that art is a great thing, but at times it can also be kind of bizarre and confusing, and sometimes it's hard to tell what's going on or what people are trying to accomplish, or just it can be a little mind-boggling. So I'm here today to tell you what I think about art. And if you want to make your life a little easier, because I know you've got a lot of things going on, if you can just agree with everything I say, and then that's a little less you have to worry about. So I just looked up, I just went to Google and typed in something like most famous art pieces or famousest paintings or something, and these 10 paintings popped up, and I'm just going to run through them and tell you what I think about them, and you can rest easy knowing what I think about them and what you should think about them as also. All right. Okay, so this first one should be no surprise at all. Obviously, this is a nice painting, right? It's well done. I couldn't do this, but I think we can all agree that there's no inherent reason why this should be the most popular, the most famous painting in the world, right? I mean, for a long time, this was just another painting hanging in the Louvre, and then one day, some guy working there went in while it was open. He hid in a closet, waited until the place closed, then he came out of the closet, stuck this painting under his jacket, and walked out with it. It was missing for 2 years. They even brought in Picasso for questioning. It's a little ridiculous, really, and by the time they got it back, it had blown up in the news so much. Well, really, this painting went viral in the truest sense, and now, they say 10 million people come to the Louvre every year, and the director of the Louvre says that he thinks about 80% of the people come to see just this painting. It's by Leonardo da Vinci, of course. You all know that. It's now behind bulletproof glass. The real one is a little smaller, I think, because people try to throw acid on it. You can see a little bit of, there's a chip missing where someone threw a rock at it once, but she's a little crinkly in the face now. She's not aging too well, but seriously, I mean, it's a well done painting, but she's just like some random lady, and she just looks like a random lady, and it just looks like a painting of a random lady. I do like the background, however. The background looks pretty fantastic. And I like her veil. I do like her veil. All of that, her veil and the background does a lot for me. And her hands. I like that. And I've always been impressed with fabric. Like painting and drawing fabric. I think I would like this more if she was headless. Because then if they chopped off her head right here and I could see the whole, more of the background, and that would be perfect for me. That would do, yeah. Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. If you go to the MoMA, Museum of Modern Art in New York, and look at this one, I was surprised when I saw this one. You could go up and look at it, and there's actually a lot of the actual canvas showing through, unprepped. A lot of people, when they paint on canvas, they paint on primed canvas, which is canvas with some sort of white paint already on it. But this is just raw canvas, and a lot of this space in here where it looks like there's white paint behind it, that's just the canvas showing through. And I was pretty I don't know if I was surprised. I just didn't expect, even especially on the edges, you can just see the canvas showing through, plain as day. This is the view from Van Gogh's asylum. This is his room. He checked himself into the asylum after he, ripped off his ear or whatever he did. Crazy guy. He did a lot of paintings from the view from his monastery asylum there, and he really liked painting that view, apparently. I like this. I like how he really gobs on the paint, unlike a lot of other painters I've seen, that are popular. This star right here apparently is Venus. I don't know, I like the flow and the texture. It works for me. While he was living in his insane asylum, he did a lot of painting, and every now and then he would send off a batch of his paintings to his brother, for safekeeping or something. Even this one, he didn't send off one time just to save on postage because he thought it was he considered it a failure, but now it's his most popular one. All right, let's see what we've got next. This is The Scream by Edward Munch, or whatever his name is. I've got a pretty crappy printout of it here, but it's not that detailed of a picture anyways. It looks like he did it with crayons or pastels or something. He actually did several different versions of this in several different mediums. And several of them were subject to several different art thefts over the years. I'm not sure why entirely. Apparently this guy was walking along the fjords one day, probably pining for them, and he saw this sunset with the clouds glowing bright, tumultuous red, and he said it looked like they were screaming out and shrieking or something, and he said it was the shriek of nature, and so he painted it or scribbled it or something. I don't know. One of the other versions, the only one that's not in a museum, was sold for 120 million at Sotheby's, or however you pronounce that place, bought by some rich guy. I do like the concept of that one though, because that one has a frame that was painted by Edward, and even has a poem written about all of this on the frame or something like that. I think that gives it a nice personal touch. I appreciate that, even if I don't. I mean, this is it's cool, right? I don't have a problem against this, but I feel like if a painting pops up in the most famous paintings in the world search, it's okay to not think every painting is amazing just because it's famous. Number 2 by Mr. Leonardo here. Got The Last Supper. This is just on the wall of some dining room in a monastery somewhere in Milan, I think. And the crazy thing about this being the most famous painting in the world is that directly opposite this, on the other wall, is this incredible painting of the crucifixion that I personally like much more and you never hear about. But apparently this has something going for it. Apparently this painting used to be a lot more vivid and bright and awesome, but over the years it's much degraded and looks kind of ghostly now. This depicts Jesus declaring that one of them will betray him. Here we have Bartholomew and James the Lesser and Andrew, and James the Lesser is kind of reaching around and stroking the shoulder of Peter, and Peter's kind of leaning over and whispering in the very young, girly-looking ear of John. He's leaning over Judas Iscariot, who's very kind of in the shadows somehow, looking very shady and taken aback by Jesus' proclamation. How did he know? And then over here we have Thomas and James the Greater and Philip. They're all looking very distraught. And then over here, these three are just kind of in a group talking amongst themselves. You think you've got Matthew and Jude and Simon. Yeah, and Simon is, he's worn away to just a silhouette here. He looks extra creepy. One thing I do like about this painting is that even if these were just a bunch of random people, despite the significance of the subject matter, I do like how it's arranged, all these, the vanishing point is right between Jesus' eyes. And so all these lines here are all pointing down straight there and vanishing behind his noggin. That's pretty cool how it's all, I can appreciate that. Except for these ones. I don't think, that's not part of the painting. But that's pretty cool. I would have it on my wall if it took up a whole wall. This would be pretty cool, taking up a whole wall. It's pretty epic and there's a lot of tension and it makes your room look bigger too, because it looks like there's another room sprouting off from the side of your room. And here we have the Creation of Adam by Michelangelo. And this is just, it's very cool. I like it. I like how weird it is, God is kind of perched upon all these weird little Cupid things. This is God kind of reaching out to Adam. He's supposed to be about to impart the spark of life into Adam, I suppose. I do, so he's like perched on all these weird little cupids inside what looks like to be a bedsheet parachute, like the ones I used to try to fashion to jump out of second floor windows. And then Adam's kind of reclining here, and God is really working very hard to reach out to Adam, and Adam is not working very hard to reach out to God. But then I realized, if God is about to impart the spark of life, does that mean Adam is actually dead in this drawing? And God just kind of made him and imposed him there, and then I have no idea what's going on. But the weirder part of all this is that, why is this so famous, and then this is only a tiny part of the whole incredible, amazing ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, which Michelangelo was commissioned to do? I mean, look at all that. It's amazing. Michelangelo was commissioned to do the Pope's tomb, which he worked on for like 40 years and never really finished. But some other artist was jealous that Michelangelo got that commission, so he didn't think Michelangelo was good at this fresco stuff. So he whispered in the Pope's ear, somebody, and said, hey, get Michelangelo to do the Sistine Chapel. And then he thought Michelangelo would make a fool of himself or something, trying to do the Sistine Chapel thing. But of course, Michelangelo, knocked it out of the ballpark, painting these weird, bulbous people. Another thing I think is weird about this is how, like, immaculate and well-formed and painted the people are, but then, like, some of these back parts of the background look like they were colored in with a crayon or something. It all is very epic, though. I can appreciate that about it. I like it. Once again, the fabric and the cloth, I've always appreciated. I like that. So I think this one's called Girl with a Pearl Earring by Johann Vermeer. And she's got like a kind of a crackly face. A crackly perfect. But this is another one that kind of puzzles me as to why this popped up in my search of the top most famous paintings. Like, it's a nice painting. I couldn't do it. I like some things about it, but why? I've come to realize that there are all these other cultural and like sociological and all these other big words at play here in the art world that I have no understanding of. And I don't really care about that much. I probably should care about. I just like looking at things, and when it comes to art, I like looking at things and deciding whether I like them or not for the most part. It's fun to read about them a little, and decide whether, it has a cool story or something. But personally, I make art because I don't know why I make art, but she's got a big earring, She looks nice. I like how black they say the background was actually supposed to be green at one point. This one boggles my mind. This one I like not just because, but I am a big fan of Salvador Dali. This one is The Persistence of Memory, and it features a bunch of pocket watches melting on various parts of the landscape. Actually, this one doesn't look very melted at all. It's just got a kind of a weird gathering of ants on it. He liked ants that kind of meant decay to him. He also liked making weird kind of disshapen faces. I think this is an eyelid and maybe like a tongue sticking out of a weird nosy thing. I don't know. Anyway, these are like the cliffs of Catalonia over here where he spent some time growing up, and like a weird surrealist landscape. Some people, they try to read into art too much, and they're like talking about Einstein and how he was influenced by the theory of relativity and how time can bend. And then he's like, no, I was just influenced by some pieces of cheese I saw melting one day. One thing that does bug me about this one, how some people call this melting watches, or some people think they're melting clocks. You don't call a watch a clock. But I'm just being pedantic and silly. Salvador had a lot of weird themes running through a lot of his work. One of them was weird twisty watches, and so he happened to do a few other like weird sculptures with twisty watches and a couple other paintings. And but even after he painted this painting, he did kind of like a weird sequel called The Disintegration of the Persistence of Memory, which I think is also really cool. But all in all, I went and saw this one at the Museum of Modern Art. It's only really like this big, so I really blew it up here. But it was much smaller than I expected, and it's kind of a weird, pleasant surprise because you could tell he put a lot of work in. Like, it was a lot of detail packed into like a tiny little thing. I don't know. It was tiny. It was small. But this painting makes me feel very lonely, personally. I just like looking at it because the landscape is so empty and bleak. This painting by Rembrandt actually has a very complicated name, a long one, referencing the captain or whoever is in it, and something, I don't remember what it is though. Most people just call it the Night Watch or something. I think it's interesting. I thought it was kind of boring at first, just because it looked like a bunch of people standing around. But what I do appreciate about it is the contrast, like how much darkness there is with little bits of stuff going on in it, and then how much, then the little bits of light also. Lots of times in my own drawings, I have a hard time, like committing to a lot of deep darkness. Maybe he started with by painting everything black first. Maybe that's easier. I don't know. But for a long time, there was like a really heavy varnish on this painting apparently, and people thought it was actually at night. That's why they called it the Night Watch. That's why this is a common name for the painting. But then they took the varnish off and realized it was really just supposed to be a group of people stepping out of a dark courtyard into broad daylight. I don't know, it's pretty cool. These are all like probably famous people with different expressions on their faces. Very well drawn. It's definitely a thing of high skill. And there used to be more of the painting, like up to here and probably out to here. But they just chopped it off to make it fit between a couple of pillars one time, because that was the style at the time. I do like these spears. I'm a fan of those spears. And that is a sweet sword. I don't know, that handle almost looks unholdable. But here we have The Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli, something like that. I like this one. It's weird. That's why I like it. I'll tell you what I like about it. I like this. First of all, this is the first thing that struck me besides the naked girl in the middle. The clothes, like I've said before, the fabric, the wrinkles, the flowing stuff there. It's just like the weird fantasy aspect of it. I don't know. So apparently this is Venus, and she is always born as a fully grown woman, born up out of the ocean, and she's being brought to the seashore on a scallop shell. The weird thing about it is she's somehow perched right on the very edge of it, impossibly and precariously. And I think this is supposed to be an embodiment of the wind. This guy is incredibly red-faced and about to like blow a gasket, blowing her along. And I don't know who this is, but she's got a cloak for her to cover her up. The waves look really weird. So this guy wasn't going for realism at all. Like, it just goes to show that to make a very, very, very famous, popular, influential painting, you don't have to be good at drawing, like proportional or anatomically correct arms or necks, or you don't have to be good at drawing feet at all. Not even a little bit. You can draw feet really bad. This is cool. I like it. I like the colors. I don't know, it looks like she's about to fall over, but the waves really throw me. They look like scales on the side of a snake. That's the thing that I like probably least about it. He could have done a little better than that, right? You've all seen this one before. American Gothic by, what's his name? Grant Wood. The only time I ever saw this one in person was at the Art Institute of Chicago, and there was like a group of fifth graders around it, and there was like some teacher there gesturing wildly at it, telling them what to think. So they were all having their thinking done for them also, which I fully approve of. Obviously, this is a very, at first it looks like a very boring painting, and it kind of is, but then you kind of start thinking about what's going on. Like, first of all, I always assumed this was his wife, but then I found out that some people, it's not so cut and dry, and some people think it could be his daughter. And then I started just wondering, like, which one is it? Apparently this is modeled after the guy's dentist, and this is modeled after the guy's sister. One day, Grant Wood was just driving through the countryside somewhere, and he saw this crazy little house in what they call, I think, Gothic Revival style architecture. And he just thought it was ridiculous that they would stick this Gothic style window in what he thought was just a flimsy, cheap little house. And he considered it extremely paintable. So he made like a little sketch of it, and maybe he came back, I think he might have come back to paint it one other day or something. But yeah, so this house actually exists in real life. I think it's called the Dibble House or Dribble Drobble House or something. But it's probably a landmark, a huge landmark by now. It's a little bit, I mean, so it's still kind of a boring picture, but it's slightly more interesting than I thought at first. I do like the texture on the guy's forehead. And obviously this guy is looking at whoever's taking or painting the picture, and you just wonder why she isn't looking there and what she's actually looking at. Like, pay attention. Or what are you paying attention to? The sky is also kind of a weird, depressing color also. Oh, that's all for today. For episode 1 of What I Think About Art. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll return next time. If you want to make life easier on yourself, just remember everything I said. If you want to know which pictures to like and not to like for whichever dumb reasons.